The good, the bad, and then something different. Welcome back to Intentional Wealth. In today's video, we're going to talk about good debt versus bad debt. We're also going to talk about the two main schools of thought behind them, as well as my own views on this whole topic. But first, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you're notified every time we release new content. There is pretty much two schools of thought behind the whole good debt versus bad debt debate. And the first person that we should probably talk about, the only person that stands almost alone in his whole way of thinking, is Dave Ramsey. Now, Dave Ramsey believes that any debt, personal debt or business debt, or any debt otherwise, is all bad debt. In fact, he teaches 7 baby steps to get out of debt and live your life on a cash basis. He helps people get out of debt, make investments such as college tuition funds for kids, and regular investments for cash flow at a later date or for retirement. And then when he gets into talking about real estate investments, he talks about buying real estate investments or other types of business in cash. 100% cash. No taking any type of debt, whether it's good or bad, to buy what you need. The other school of thought mainly stems from Robert Kiyosaki and all of his followers, so it's pretty much Robert Kiyosaki and everybody else versus Dave Ramsey. Robert Kiyosaki's theory is pretty much that there is good debt versus bad debt. Good debt puts money into your pocket, and bad debt takes money out of your pocket. Now you're probably wondering, hey, well, whether it's good debt or bad debt, doesn't it all take money out of your pocket? Well, his theory is basically this. For instance, if you buy a personal home, that is bad debt because that is actually taking money out of your pocket. You are paying for that home. Yes, you build equity, hopefully at some point, but it's still money out of your pocket. On the flip side, when he talks about buying rental properties, and if you buy rental properties the right way, what he's talking about is you should be able to make enough rent on that rental property to cover the debt service or the debt payments on that rental property. And if done the right way, it should actually put money into your pocket in the form of profits. And that's how you have good debt that puts money into your pockets. Another example of this is like, let's say if you go and buy a personal car, and you're paying money out of your pocket for that personal vehicle. Well, that's considered a bad debt. But on the flip side, if you buy a car for your business purposes or find a way to make money using that vehicle, then hopefully the money you're making should be enough to cover the expenses for that vehicle plus put profits into your pocket. That is another example of bad debt versus good debt. Comment down below what you think about good debt versus bad debt and which side are you on? Are you on the Dave Ramsey side or the Robert Kiyosaki side? Before I let you know what I think, I should probably preface my opinion with saying that this is just my opinion. I am not giving you advice. I am not legally certified in anything except how to make money for myself, not for you. But I'm only letting you know what I've done, and my opinions are solely my opinions. If you want professional advice on investments, you should probably contact your attorney or your accountant or your financial advisor. It's your money. Nobody's gonna watch it like you. When it comes to the whole good debt versus bad debt debate, I am actually a fan of both sides. I really do love Dave Ramsey when it comes to helping people get out of debt. I think Dave Ramsey's program is a great program for helping people that don't have self-discipline when it comes to managing their own money. I also believe that his program is a really great program for helping people, training them to get self-discipline and getting smarter with making better decisions with their money. And hopefully for the Dave Ramsey followers, once they are able to get out of personal debt and make better decisions with their money, it actually helps them to become more natural with getting smarter with the decisions that they're making in regards to their money. And they make better choices when it comes to building their wealth. Now, when it comes to the Robert Kiyosaki side of things, I did used to see a difference between good debt and bad debt. And I always used to think that any debt that I take that is for a good purpose is good debt. But I realized that that kind of pigeonholed me into a very narrow-minded way of thinking. And this is why I don't really think about debt in a debt sort of way. I believe that any debt, whether it's good debt, bad debt, personal debt, business debt, it's just all bad. At the end of the day, you don't want to be in debt. And this is why. Let's take a personal home, for instance. We've all been trained to think that a personal home is a great investment, that over time that you build equity and you build wealth in your home. Well, as we learned in 2008, and if you have watched my foreclosure video, if you haven't, go ahead and watch it, so you know what happens when people are underwater and they can't make their mortgage payments. Well, what happens? You get foreclosed on and you've lost most of that money. That is why I don't really believe in the good personal debt or that bad debt. As we know, with the same thing that happened in 2008, when real estate investors got too much debt on their portfolios, they weren't able to make their payment and they ended up losing most of their portfolio, if not all of it. And that's why I think debt is debt. So when I think of my investments and my money, there is a term that I like to use. It's called leverage. And the definition of leverage is, when you consider it in financial terms, borrowed capital for an investment, expecting the profits made to be greater than the interest payable. Now, I don't like to think of the terms as only interest payable. I like to think of P&I, which is principal and interest. Just like a mortgage, you have principal and interest payments. But when I'm thinking about leverage, I'm not necessarily talking about that either. There is another definition for leverage, and that is actually using something for its maximum advantage. Now, that could be using your knowledge for your maximum advantage, using your labor for your maximum advantage, using your time for your maximum advantage. But when I think of leverage, I think of using my money for my maximum advantage. And if you end up thinking in the terms of good debt versus bad debt, I believe it's still pigeonholing you to only think in a limited sort of way. See, when I think about leverage, I think about using the resources around me that I already have and getting the maximum advantage out of that. For instance, last year I bought a motorcycle. Yes, I bought a motorcycle. Now, I had about $20,000 in my account, and actually I had more than that, but we're gonna use $20,000 because that is the number that I knew I would use for an investment. Now, I could have paid $8,000 cash out of that $20,000 for this motorcycle, but that would have only left me with $12,000 to invest with. What I ended up doing was I took out a loan for the motorcycle, and I pay on the motorcycle a monthly payment of just over $100. See, now what I've done is I've been able to keep that major principal in my bank account, and I'm using the bank's money to buy my bike. Now, you're probably thinking, hey, well, don't you still have a payment on that motorcycle? Well, yes, I do. But this is the way I think about it. See, now I have $20,000 because I took out a loan instead of having $12,000 if I paid cash. And this is the investment that I make with this $20,000. Every few months or so, I help out a friend by making an investment with him. He needs a short-term loan, usually 30 days or less, and he's willing to pay me 2.5% or 2.5 points on the principal. So what I do is I give him $20,000 cash at the beginning of the month, and at the end of the month, he gives me my $20,000 back plus $500, which is the 2.5%. Now, if I had only had $12,000 to give him, that 2.5% would come out to $300. Now, I make extra payments on my motorcycle, about $150 to $200. If I had only had the $12,000, I'd be getting $300 a month, which is about 2 months worth of payments. But since I have $20,000 to give him and I get $500 after every one of these investments, I actually have about 3 and a little more change worth of motorcycle payments. So this is the way I use leverage to my advantage. First of all, that's someone else's money. Yes, I do have to pay for it, but I use my money to make investments that actually pay for the motorcycle. So at the end of the day, did I really use my money? Now you could be thinking to yourself, well, $500 is your money and you're ending up paying that to a motorcycle, which is true. But that's the whole point of this. The whole point of making investments is to grow money from your money, right? That is the whole point of why we talk about returns on your money, return on investment, cash on cash return. These are all terms that we use in the investment world. And the whole point of all of this is to help your money grow so that at some point you can start using that money to fund your lifestyle. Well, I am the type of person that is not trying to fund my lifestyle at some point. I'm trying to fund my lifestyle now. So in the little ways that I can, I fund a motorcycle with my investments. Hopefully at some point I'll be able to move up to funding a car or funding a home payment. Who knows? Whatever it is, the sky's the limit. The whole point is to fund my whole lifestyle through my investments so that I can live my life today and not tomorrow. Another example of how I use leverage is if you go back to January, I released a video entitled How to Invest in Real Estate Without Borrowing from the Bank, where I basically talk about this investment that I made in December 2019, where I bought a house with an 8.8% down payment, which is basically $20,000 in this case, and I make $500 cash flow or 30% return every year. Now, if we talk about the Dave Ramsey strategy where you pay that in cash, then you're looking at a full purchase price out of your pocket of $227,500. Now, because you don't have a mortgage payment, yes, you are going to cash flow a lot more money than I do. Your cash flow is going to come to about $1,431. But when you divide the money that you put in with the money that you're getting out every year, it comes to a return of about 7.5%, which is pretty good, actually. Definitely better than any bank is going to give you. Now, if you talk about traditional lending with 20% down, or even how Robert Kiyosaki teaches traditional lending for beginning investments or beginning investors, then you're talking about 20% down with $45,500 coming out of your pocket. That is going to lower your cash flow because now you have a mortgage payment. Your cash flow is going to be about $615. And when you divide what you're getting over the year by how much money you've put in, you're looking at a return of about 16%. Now that's really good. That's a really good return on this property that I'm talking about. As I mentioned earlier, the way I did it was I put 8.8% down, which equals about $20,000 out of my pocket. Now, because I put a lower down payment down, I do have a higher mortgage, but my cash flow is still about $500 a month. Now, I also got a lower interest rate at the time because it was not through a bank. It was actually in a strategy called owner financing. When I take what I get every year divided by the amount of money that I put in, which is about half of what you would do with the Robert Kiyosaki way, my return on my investment is pretty much double Robert Kiyosaki's way, which is 30% for me. And this is why I like to say, I like to think about this whole debt topic in the terms of leverage. Because when you start thinking in the way of good debt versus bad debt, you actually narrow your thinking a little bit to only thinking about debt. But if you can start thinking about leveraging your money, and especially thinking about outside of the box things, that is where you're gonna really make some money. I would like to know what you think about my theory of leverage. So go ahead and comment down below what you think about my theory. And also, if you have any questions on any of my leverage strategies that I use or want me to make videos on anything else that I do, please go ahead and comment down below and I will try and answer all of your questions. If you like what you've seen here today, then go ahead and subscribe to the channel, like the video, and follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget to like and share.